people who are podcasters. What they all have in common is that they are all people with disabilities making change in their own ways. This event can be heard on AMI Audio live on your web stream and will also be available on select cable channels. Afterwards, you can find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. But I hope you can stay with us for the next 3 hours. The International Day of Persons with Disabilities was proclaimed by the United Nations in 1992. And it is as significant and relevant today as it was back then. The goal of the international disability rights movement has always been to empower people with disabilities as change makers. And we, as people with disabilities, have made change in a variety of ways, whether that's through research, campaigning, activism, or advocacy. People with disabilities, by their very nature, have to be adaptable and ready to embrace change. And when we think about the role that people with disabilities play as change makers, it's worth thinking about the fact that we're having this conversation in a broader global context and dealing with some pivotal global issues, whether it's war and conflict, economic deprivation and instability, or the looming threat of climate change. One thing is clear: people with disabilities aren't just here for the ride. We are drivers of change. And that will be the theme for this afternoon. You'll be hearing from a variety of speakers in various walks of life, all of whom will speak to our theme for this afternoon, which is embracing change for people with disabilities. It's my great pleasure to now turn things over to Richard Marion, who will begin by acknowledging that we are on Indigenous land and will offer a few words in the form of our land acknowledgement. Richard, over to you.
Marcy. Tanshi Risha Dinisha Kang. Hello, my name is Richard. Today we gather on the lands of many Indigenous peoples across Canada. Let us pause to reflect and honor those who have cared for these lands long before the arrival of settlers who occupied the traditional territories of many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities. As a Métis individual, I am honored to live on the lands of the First Nations who cared for the territory on which I reside. As a Métis person, I feel a deep connection to the Métis homeland, which includes parts of the provinces of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Ontario, and British Columbia. While the Métis people were once considered the forgotten people, not being accepted in First Nations communities and among European settlers, just like people with disabilities, we are now claiming our rightful place among the Indigenous peoples of Canada. As we acknowledge the historical injustices and the ongoing challenges of Indigenous peoples across this land, we need to be committed to walking along the, we need to be committed to walking along the, oh shoot, I might just went hold on. Sorry, I'm sorry about that. As we acknowledge the historical injustices and the ongoing challenges in Indigenous peoples across this land, we need to be committed to walking along the path to equality for all, to ensure a future where all peoples are treated with dignity and respect. One of the things that distinguishes the Métis people is the Métis sash. The sash is worn as a symbol of pride in our Métis heritage and is also used to honor completion of significant milestones in a person's life. Today, I am honored by honoring my 2S LGBTQIA plus brothers and sisters as I have the Métis Rainbow Sash, which I received for participating in a Métis Gathering to Heal held last year. To close, I offer this prayer as I will confess I found it online, but I feel it reflects the intent of today's discussions. Creator, we gather here today a community of individuals who navigate the world with unique abilities and challenges. We thank you for the strength, resilience, and creativity that each of us possess. Guide our discussions and communications, understanding and respect, with understanding and respect. Open our hearts to the experience of others. Inspire our minds to find innovative solutions. Empower our spirits to overcome obstacles and achieve our goals. May our time together be a source of hope and healing and empowerment. Marcy, thank you.
Good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Pat Seed, and I'm pleased to be your MC for this event. I am Director 2 on the Board of Directors for the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians, AEBC. I'd like to thank you, Richard, for that wonderful land acknowledgement and also for the prayer. That was very inspiring and really puts us at peace as we begin this event. I also want to thank our AMI broadcast team for broadcasting this event. This event is being made accessible by cart captioning by the CHS, Canadian Hearing Society, and also by our ASL interpreters, sign language interpreters, from a sign. We ask that you would speak slowly so that all of the captioning and interpreting can be done. This really makes everything accessible. And we also ask that you would say your name, particularly before you have a question. We have 8 presentations, including 6 speakers and 2 entertainment breaks. The format of the day is each speaker will be followed by a question and answer period in which you will raise your hand or you'll put the question in the chat. We need to ask, however, that you do not use the chat at any time during the presentations. So the keys that you can use are you can mute and unmute on your PC with Alt-A. Okay. You can mute and unmute on a Mac by using Command-Shift-A. To mute and unmute on a smartphone, you would locate the mute and unmute button and in the app, and you would then take care of it that way. If you have dialed in by phone, you would mute and unmute by pressing *6. You can raise and lower your hand on a Windows PC with Alt-Y. On a Mac, you would use Option-Y. And on a smartphone, you would find the raise lower hand button in the app, and you would use that. Under the More section, it might be. If you have dialed in by phone, you would raise and lower your hand by using *9. Our partners, very happy to have our empowerment partner this year is Baker McKenzie, LLP, and our broadcasting partner, AMI Incorporated. And our other partners are Accessibility Hamilton Alliance, AHA, Accessibility Housing Network, AHN, CCB Toronto, Visionaries, Center for Independent Living in Toronto, CILT, CILT, Citizens with Disabilities Ontario, CWDO, Thunder Bay Information Radio, TBIR, Community Services for Independence Northwest, CSINW, Ethno-Racial People with Disabilities Coalition of Ontario, ERTCO, Trailblazers Tandem Cycling Club, Wood Green Community Services. We will now have our first speaker, and actually they are a team doing the presentation. Stephanie Neeson and Nicole Greco. They will tell us how they have realized that as persons with disabilities, they are as capable as the next person to create and run businesses in and on the nonprofit and also in the e-commerce sectors. Nicole and Stephanie, the mic is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie, and it is a pleasure to have you here today. It is a pleasure to be here today, sharing the stage with my friend and collaborator, Nicole. Together, we have embarked on a journey filled with twists and turns, learning, opportunities, and immense growth. As two women living with spina bifida and hydrocephalus, we are excited to talk to you about the transitions we have navigated in our lives and how those experiences have shaped us into who we are today.
This is Nicole, reflecting on our teenage years. It feels like just yesterday that we met at summer camp. Those carefree days filled with laughter and new friendships were instrumental in our growth. Today, in our mid-40s, we are here before you to share how we transformed from young campers into independent women.
We learned that while change can be daunting, it is also essential for personal growth.
Let me take you back to my childhood for a moment. Growing up, I was taught that if I needed anything or wanted something, I had to speak up. This lesson in advocacy was a cornerstone of my upbringing. It instilled in me the confidence to express my needs, a skill that I began to utilize in my teenage years. Confidence became my ally, not only in advocacy, but in all aspects of my life.
During our time at camp, we engaged in a valuable experience, learning how to care for ourselves. It was the first time we were away from home without our families, and it was quite the eye-opening experience. We had to communicate our needs to people who were unfamiliar with our needs and routines.
I remember this experience vividly. It was liberating and challenging all at once. I discovered new strengths and limitations. Learning to think independently and problem solve.
The camp environment provided a safe space for us to explore capabilities, an essential step in becoming the women we are today.
For me, being around people like Stephanie was a revelation. Before camp, I often felt isolated. In my experiences, being the only child with a disability in my elementary school. Finding a community that resonates with my experiences that significantly impacted my journey. A supportive network of individuals facing similar challenges reinforces the understanding that we are not isolated in our difficulties.
As we neared high school graduation, the reality of managing life on a fixed income became apparent. For those of us with disabilities, achieving financial independence can be particularly overwhelming. Transitioning into adulthood and establishing independent lives revealed the complexities of adult responsibilities, such as budgeting for bills and groceries, primarily concerning the source of funds for these necessities.
I was fortunate to have family who supported me until my financial situation improved through the Ontario Disability Support Plan, or ODSP, a monthly assistance program which provided essential assistance but also meant enduring poverty due to my limited skills in budgeting and saving.
In contrast, I had been equipped with these skills from a young age, enabling me to manage my finances effectively. During our early adult years, we pursued different housing opportunities. I engaged with an independent living program called the Gauge for Independent Living, which equipped me with the vital life skills and guidance on collaborating with personal support workers.
Lacking similar opportunities, I transitioned directly from my parents' home to my own apartment Navigating the complexities of housing and attendant care required significant time, patience, and determination. Just as I began to lose hope, I received an offer from March of Dimes, which allowed me to live independently while receiving necessary care. This experience not only enhanced my independence, but also reinforced the value of perseverance.
To illustrate that we have taken different paths, particularly regarding love and marriage, it is worth noting in our unique experiences. Both of us were fortunate to find partners who complemented our lives, but our journeys to that point were quite distinct. I met my husband as a teenager through the independent living program.
I encountered mine through an adult hockey league.
Although both of us married individuals with disabilities, our journeys with our significant others were quite different. My story started back in 1999 at the independent living program called the Teen Independence Living Program, also known as TIP. This is where I originally met my now husband. Our dating relationship faced challenges due to long distance. I did not live in the city of Toronto at the time, and he did. After the program ended, and due to not being able to see each other often, we ended dating a few months later. We reconnected in 2009. Now, now both living in the city of Toronto, and decided to give dating another try, leading to an engagement in 2012 and marriage in 2013.
In contrast, I remember not being so brave and just watching my husband from across the room for a few hockey seasons. It wasn't until we were on a team trip to Minnesota with our hockey league that I got up the courage to talk to my future husband. We started dating in 2010, got engaged in December of 2014, and married in August of 2015.
Approximately a year ago, I discovered a webinar hosted by an organization named Up with Women, which is committed to assisting low-income women and gender-diverse individuals in establishing sustainable careers. Motivated by their mission, I enrolled in the program. Through dedicated coaching, effort, and a touch of creativity, I launched a small business that combines my artistic passion with my aim to promote joy and positivity. In spirit of collaboration, I introduced this opportunity to Nicole, who is now pursuing her own path in the Up with Women program with a focus on advocacy. As we contemplate our respective journeys, it becomes evident that change is an unavoidable aspect of life. Although it may evoke fear, it also serves as a powerful driver for growth, opportunity, and empowerment. We have encountered various challenges, yet Each transition has imparted essential lessons about resilience, advocacy, and independence.
Thank you for allowing Stephanie and I the opportunity to share our stories about how two ladies with spina bifida and hydrocephalus were able to transition and move through life and the many transitions we have had up until now. If there's one thing that I hope you will take away from our talk today, it's the realization that we grew up with the same disability. That does not mean that we are cut from the same cloth. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie and Nicole. And now we have time for some questions, if anybody has any. You can mute and unmute on a PC with Alt-A, mute and unmute on a Mac with Command-Shift-A, mute and unmute on a smartphone with locating the mute and unmute button. And if you have dialed in, you can mute and unmute with pressing *6. Please wait till you are recognized before you speak. And you can raise and lower your hand on a Windows PC with Alt-Y. On a Mac, you would use Option Y. And on a smartphone, you would look for the raise and lower hand button. And lastly, if dialing in on a telephone, you would raise and lower your hand with *9, apologize. So does anyone have any questions?
We have Shelley and I'm doing your hosting. So it's Marcy speaking and Shelley has her hand up. Go ahead, Shelley.
Thank you very much. Ladies, if you were now sitting in front of a room with policymakers for the country and your province, what is one thing that you would absolutely want them to know about your disability before they made any more changes, any more policy choices? One thing that, because you both have different roots, one thing you'd want them to know about you or your disability.
I'll give this a try. So the one thing that anybody should know about us having spina bifida is known as the snowflake disability, meaning no two people are exactly alike. I may be able to stand up and walk a couple of feet. Stephanie may not be able to do that at all. But it's one of those things that, but on top of that, and aside from that, what one thing I would want somebody I'm talking to know, especially if it's an MPP or somebody in government, I would want them to know that the ODSP that they provide us monthly is not enough. And we've been currently dealing with the Canadian Disability Benefit. I've been on the ground floor with that, working with March Dimes straight through. And now is the time to fight. Well, I say the term fight loosely, but now is the time to get in touch with your MPs and your MPPs and let them know that you are not being given enough. Because I think what I read was they're going to get 200 a year instead of the 2,500 monthly that we
200 a month, yeah, up
Yeah.
to. Now, in New Brunswick, that's great because we only get $918 a month to live on, not even close to ODSP. So for us, it's a 25% increase.
Yeah.
But it's still not even close to a month because our rents are the same as Toronto now. Like it's really bad here.
Yeah, I myself, I get about $1,750 a month.
Yeah. It's horrible how they treat us, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your answer. I appreciate that.
Okay, and I'm just going to quickly check the chat and hope that anybody who has a question just raises their hand because All right, nope, there's nothing in the chat unless the chat is not behaving today.
I can ask another question if I've got time.
Sure, go ahead.
What
I
is-
have no other hands, so
Okay.
go ahead.
Because I'm the chair of a disability coalition here in New Brunswick, and I also have a disability. And this is something we ask, what is missing year after year in housing that would make your life so much easier in terms of a disability to get housing that is accessible? Like, what's one thing they don't get, they don't understand?
What they don't understand here is that rent geared to income, I have just learned this year, has two different layers to it. One side of the coin says they will take 30% of your income and they will, so let's say I get $500 for housing and shelter. They will take 30% of that and that's my rent for the month. Whereas right now I'm being told that they are doing it a different way, that they are taking your whole I think notice of assessment amount and basing the 30,000, the 30% off of that amount. And that's not acceptable, especially if you're only making $1,200 a month and half of that's going to rent.
Okay. I
Uh,
still,
if-
oh.
Um, sorry, if I could just continue with that. Another thing is with a lot of the construction and everything going up right now, there is not a lot of accessible or affordable housing going up. And that is also an issue because wait times for housing can be 10 years or longer. It can be shorter, but it can take 10 years or longer for some people. And that is not appropriate because there's so many people waiting for it. And there's such a need that something needs to be done about that as well.
Great, and I think that brings us to the end of this Q&A session. So Pat,
I'm with you. Okay, so thank you, Stephanie and Nicole, and thank you, Marcia, for helping handle the questions. Much appreciated, and we do thank everybody for the questions. Our next speaker, as we know, being positive is essential for our everyday quality of life. Taba Tahir is going to tell us how to get the motivation and then how to keep it going. Taba, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. Just give me 1 second here. Hi, everyone. My name is Taba Tahir, and I am 25 years old. Today, I want to share my thoughts about what motivation means to me. Motivation is hope. Motivation is strongness. It's positivity. I will tell you my example. What I've been through. Well, some of my adventures and examples. I am a third-year student at Mohawk College, and what I faced, like, because I take a reduced course load, so I only go to college on certain days. This semester, I just finished one semester for the fall. So this semester I was going 2 days a week, but I had to they have to find a I have to find a ride to take me all the way to Hamilton. And honestly, that is a challenge itself. So like my daily life is basically a challenge each and every day. Um, and like no matter what challenge you have, you should always face it with a smile on your face. Then you'll see the positive result like you get from like from the challenge you're facing. And again, like there was another challenge, a recent challenge, because I go to Mohawk College. They wanted like in the program that I'm taking, they want um for students to get work experiences like um placement. So even with that, I had to find my own placement because my teacher said to me, we don't guarantee every student gets we don't guarantee to give a placement to every student in Mohawk College. And I said to her, why? Like, you know, if you're saying you can't find me a placement, that doesn't mean I can't find myself a placement. So I started calling different places, you know, that offer, you know, certain positions for people like me. And honestly, it was hard. It was hard to find one because, and I honestly got very discouraged by the people that I called because like most people are like, what kind of position are you looking for? And what we don't have that position, or you know, but I didn't give up because life is not about giving up. So like that was in self, it was a challenge too, because when a when a teacher says to you that we cannot guarantee that we will find you a placement, that's like, okay, am I not um am I not perfect like other people that are not in wheelchairs? But I want to prove to the world we are all perfect in our own way, because that's what change is all about. Whether the change whether the change is big or small, we should always face it with a smile on our face. Um, and like another example, um, before, not now, I used to be a very negative person, like you know, about being in a wheelchair. But I saw the I saw this video. This lady was in a wheelchair too. She was on a back of a porter her jeep, and the jeep fell in the ditch, and she was bedridden for 2 months. 2 months, and because of that, she became in a wheelchair because she became in a wheelchair. So uh so she became in a wheelchair, so that evolved her to be in the wheelchair. But she I thought if she can speak up and she can do a TED talk in front of so many people, why can't I? So that's how I got my motivation. And also when I got accepted into Moore College, I got accepted out of 200 students. That was such a privilege for me. I was like, wow, I achieved so much. So for me, life is always a challenge. It's the way you face it, and you'll find that you will succeed in life. We all have down moments. We all feel sorry for ourselves. Believe me, I used to, but now I don't, because I know if no matter if I'm in a wheelchair, that doesn't matter because I have a heart. I have a heart of gold, and I think more smarter than other people. So just give me a second here. And I was born in Pakistan, so over there, they don't like they don't for people like me, they don't have like equipment like sidewalks or ramps or they just kind of people there they just kind of discourage people like people who have disabilities. So I've been discouraged a lot. There people used to say to me, "Oh, you can't do this because like you can't walk, you can't do this." But at that time I felt really discouraged. But you know what? Then I think to myself, I'm 25 years old now, that why do we have to be discouraged? We are all perfect. So, and again, when I'm not feeling my 100%, sometimes I feel down. We all feel down, but then I think I'm not my 100% now, but I will be. So I motivate myself. And, and I, challenges are everywhere. Like going to college, reduced times a week is a challenge for me because sometimes I'm not able to go to college because of some reason. But I keep myself going. I say it's okay if I miss 1 or 2 days, but at least I got the pleasure to be accepted. At least I'm going to school. Um, just give me 1 second here. And I have people. I have I have people that support me in my life a lot. They support me in my life. They support me in my life by giving me the lifestyle that I want, and I'm really grateful for that because um you know uh so my message is be grateful for what you have, and you'll always find a positive pathway. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon.
I will
Okay.
correct the name, Taba Tahir. And Marcia, now you can handle the questions, please. Thank you.
Okay, anyone who has a question, please raise your hand. And if you can't figure out how to do that and unmuting is easier, just say your name once you're unmuted and I will recognize you. Hello, Shelley.
Hi, I don't want to steal the limelight, but if I can ask a question, I will. I was wondering if Taba, if you could tell us on your down days, because I always say this to our members, right? You catch more
Yeah.
money and you can do so much more this way. What's one trick that you use on a down day to bring you up? 'Cause
Well, I'm not a big eater, but I find like if I listen to music or if I look at a picture that I like, I just or listen to a motivation TED talk or like just talk to myself, tell myself that type of everything is okay, you know, you'll get through this, that kind of a thing.
awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, and we have Anthony.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anthony, founder of Above and Beyond, also born with spina bifida as well. And Taba, I know you from Mohawk as well because I work at the college as well. Taba, I wanted just to kind of get more insight into challenges
Yeah.
that you see here in Hamilton, and what about transit, for example?
So Anthony, okay. So first of all, I don't live in Hamilton. I live in Milton, and it is so the problem was when I first started college, they couldn't find like transit transit is very expensive to go to Hamilton, and then it's too much transfer. So what they do for me now, like they hire someone to take me to college, but it's only on specific days. So that's for me, it's a challenging part because sometimes they don't even find staff, so then I miss it. So for me, it's a very like. First of all, I think like sometimes I think why can't I go use my feet and go and just like be a part of the class? But it's then I just think, oh well, it's a day and like there'll be another day and but it's hard. Especially when you get accepted out of 200 students, that's not a joke.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. And our next person with a question is Hersha.
Hi, I wanted to ask you, so there's no like accessible transit from the Hamilton GO station to Mohawk? I'm sorry, I'm
No,
just really
no,
surprised.
no, you can ask. No, not. We've like the group home that I'm at. They've tried everywhere, and first of all, the expense is a lot, and then second of all, like most GO trains are not. I don't think they're accessible.
They're not? I'm sorry, I'm just horrified.
Because we've tried everywhere. Like we've tried like, first of all, they're expensive. Then second of all, like like it's just I don't think they're yeah. So when I first started college, that's when we were having trouble finding transportation because not only that I need help with like various things like getting my lunch off my chair and stuff like that. So um I'm pretty much independent, but when it comes to things like that, then I need help. But the group home that I'm at, they tried everything before I started. The first year that I started, they tried everything. They tried like transit, taxis, everything is like they're expensive and like most of them don't come into Milton and then take you to Hamilton. So that's the main issue. They don't
Oh, I see. I see. Okay, I
won't
got you. I got you.
they won't cross the bridge.
Oh, I see.
So that's the main issue.
Oh, I see. I see. I
Yeah,
got you.
thank
Yeah.
you.
No problem.
Okay. Do we have anyone else who has a question? Oh, okay. All right.
It's Pat.
Hi.
You raised your hand. That scared me. I was like, wait a
Hi.
minute.
Sorry.
Hi, Pat.
Oops, I brought the.
Hi, Pat.
So, Taba, I'm really, really impressed by your ability to keep coming back and finding those down days. It's really difficult sometimes.
I know it is.
Yeah. And if you have,
The way I do it, only I know. But it's, life is too short.
that's right. And the up and
You
down,
should never think that you're not perfect, because we are. It's logical. It's not okay. So like, I'm not gonna sit here and cry because I don't have legs that don't move. They it's okay. They don't move, but my body moves. When my brain moves, I can talk. So it's hard, but that's the way life is sometimes.
hey, it's okay to cry sometimes. It's Pat.
Yeah.
And you're showing us that you can do that and then turn around and pick yourself up and go on again. And that is really what we really need, to know.
And you know what? I think when people realize that they have a talent, then nothing can stop them.
That's right.
Why stop? Keep going.
That's right.
Keep going. So, yeah.
Thank you ever so much.
No, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
No worries. Marcia, any other hands?
Nope. We
Okay.
have no other hands.
Okay, thank you.
If you guys don't mind, I'll leave. It was a pleasure meeting you all.
It was a pleasure meeting you too.
Absolutely, Tabber.
From you guys soon. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
So now we have an entertainment break for you. And our spoken word, it's going to be inspirational. And it's going to be spoken by Leroy Ennis. And I know that his information will be very inspirational to us. And so, Leroy, the mic is yours.
Thanks, Pat. Hi, everyone, and welcome. So just briefly, my name is Leroy. I've been an advocate for people with disabilities for over a decade. I'm currently the chair of an organization called ERDCO, ERDCO. And I'm actively involved in the community with other organizations such as Davenport Perth Neighborhood Center, Disability Without Poverty, Race and Disability Canada, and Building Legacy, and others. And briefly, speaking of talents, in 2010, I published a book of inspirational poetry called Dream in Color. I will do a couple pieces, about 3 pieces from this book. First one, very brief. Little things. Little things unsaid. Little things misread. Little things. If we don't address them, little things can grow into big problems. All right, next one. Also brief. And this is good because we can catch up back on our time frame. So it's called Friends. Trustworthy friends today are few. You might have one, maybe two. If you share your secrets with a friend that isn't true, you might as well share it with the entire crew. All right, one more. All right, speaking of positivity, it's been the theme so far. I believe in it, believe in unity and community. So this piece is called Towards a Unity. Here we go. We are striving towards a unity that in many respects so far has been very elusive. Some members of our community have contributed only neglect. Others have given all they can give. Divided, we are from our focus distracted. Opposite poles should to each other be attracted. Joined together to be a united force that can conquer any past remorse. And last verse, we are striving towards a unity that will only come in sight when everyone in our community join hands to make the work light. Respect, everybody. Thank you. Over to you, Pat.
I'm going to just pause for a second and let everyone digest those words that you've said because they're really, really inspirational. And I thank you so much for doing that for us. So just a couple of seconds here. Our next speaker is Laurissa Brousseau, and she is a student who did a summer project with Citizens with Disabilities Ontario this past summer. And I should tell you that she is not disabled, but she had some different thoughts about disabilities before she started the project. And throughout her work on the project, there was really some major changes in her attitude and in her work and in her view of people with disabilities throughout the summer project. And so, Laurissa, the mic is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour. Thank you so much for having me here today at the 8th annual Embracing Change for People with Disabilities event in honor of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. This is such a special gathering, one that celebrates empowerment, inclusion, and the resilience of the human spirit. So thank you, Stephanie, Taba, and Leroy for sharing your experiences. And I loved your speeches. My name is Laurissa Brousseau, and I am honored to be one of your speakers today. I'm currently a second-year student at McGill University, and over the summer, I had the incredible opportunity to intern at Citizens with Disabilities Ontario, CWDO, throughout the International Human Rights Internship Program offered at the Faculty of Law. Before I dive into my story, I just want to take a moment to express how truly grateful I am for the experience I was given. My time with CWDO would not have been as transformative without the incredible people I met along the way. So the advocates, the mentors, the volunteers who guided me, challenged my assumptions, and supported my growth. So their passion and resilience have left a lasting impression on me, and I owe a special thanks to them. While I may still be early in my career and personal learning journey, one thing I know for sure is that growth comes from admitting what you don't know, listening carefully, and being open to change. So I do not have a disability myself, and this internship was my first real deep dive into the world of accessibility and disability rights. And what I discovered during those months was transformative, not just for my future as a lawyer, but for me as a person. So I'd love to share a little bit about that journey with you today. So if you'd asked me a year ago what accessibility meant, I might have confidently given a polished answer, maybe about ramps, elevators, perhaps a braille sign, things I once thought were cornerstones of inclusivity. But as I quickly learned during my internship, that view was painfully limited and it involves a lot more than I initially thought. So accessibility is not just about physical infrastructure or assistive tools. It's about ensuring equal participation and breaking down barriers that prevent individuals from fully contributing and thriving in our shared spaces. And my time at CWDO helped me understand that accessibility is just as much about attitudes, policies, and systems as it is about structures. So it's about designing a world where people are not merely accommodated, but actively included and valued. So one of the most eye-opening lessons for me was understanding the pervasive and often invisible barriers that still exist in our society. For example, during my research on the intersection of climate change and persons with disabilities, I was struck by how overlooked this community is, particularly in Ontario, in disaster planning and emergency preparedness. Whether it's about, let's say, inaccessible communication system, inaccessible evacuation routes, shelters without proper accommodations, or communication systems that fail to reach everyone within a timely manner. These gaps highlight an urgent need for systemic change. And it's not just about physical safety, it's about ensuring dignity and equity in how we respond to crises. A project I worked on collaboratively during my time at CWDO involving the green economy and employment opportunities for persons with disabilities was also very interesting. This was particularly enlightening as it revealed both immense challenges policy-wise. On one hand, systemic barriers like inaccessible workplaces or outdated hiring practices limit participation. But on the other hand, there's a powerful opportunity to reshape industries and embrace diversity and inclusion. A workforce that genuinely values the unique skills and perspectives of persons with disabilities isn't just fair, but it's innovative, it's competitive, it's sustainable, and it's what we need. Dr. Buetkin and we had a presentation to ministers in Ontario over the summer on the subject, and the interest was truly there. So I am hopeful. These experiences taught me that accessibility is not just a logistical challenge or a legal requirement. It's a matter of justice, respect, and human rights. And it's about dismantling the barriers that are both visible or invisible that exclude and marginalize. So my internship kind of forced me to confront my own assumptions and recognize the profound work still left to do. And it's a responsibility that belongs to all of us, no matter what field we work in. I would say that what made my internship so powerful wasn't just the research or the tasks that I completed, but it was also a lot about the people that I met. CWDO is entirely volunteer run. And the dedication of its members is nothing short of inspiring. They are advocates, innovators, and fighters who work tirelessly to dismantle these systemic barriers. And they don't just want to be here, they want and deserve to be leading the conversations that shape their lives. And one of the key takeaways for me was that disability isn't a limitation or a vulnerability. It's a strength, a unique perspective that enriches our world. Yet our policies and systems also, our policies and systems, they often fail to reflect this. I spoke of the government strategies a little bit earlier. So as a law student, I couldn't help but see parallels between my learning journey and the living tree doctrine that they teach us in first year. And this shapes Canadian constitutional law. Just as our laws must evolve and grow to reflect changing realities, so too must our understanding of accessibility and human rights. My internship with CWDO forced me to confront my own assumptions, unlearn outdated ideas, and rethink what inclusion truly means. And this process wasn't always easy. Growth rarely is, but it was deeply rewarding. It reminded me that real change is messy, incremental, and it requires constant reflection. And this is especially true in the legal world where progress isn't often feels frustratingly slow. But just like the living tree, these ideas take time to root and adapt, and we see beautiful changes. So before the summer, my academic focus was mostly about minority linguistic rights, a cause that is close to my heart as I am a Francophone from Alberta. But now I see the intrinsic connection between language rights, accessibility, and broader human rights. At their core, it's about dismantling barriers and ensuring that everyone has a seat at the table. And the lessons I learned this summer really reshaped not just how I think about my future career, but how I approach the world. And moving forward, this internship was only the beginning of my journey into the field of accessibility and disability rights. This September, I stepped into a new role at the faculty as the disability events coordinator. I saw this as a natural progression of the work I started this summer, all the learning I went through, and I've truly enjoyed advocating for inclusion on campus and beyond. The work of building an inclusive world doesn't just end with one project or one internship. And it's a lifelong commitment that I kind of just, after meeting this community, it's such a great, yeah, it was awesome. So as I move forward, I carry with me the stories, the lessons, and the challenges I encountered during my time at CWDO. These experiences have kind of become a part of who I am, and they will shape the lawyer and the person I aspire to be. And before I close quickly, I want to leave you with a thought, but just accessibility isn't just about meeting standards or following laws. It's also about reimagining our world to ensure that no one is left behind. So whether you're an advocate, a policymaker, a designer, or simply someone who wants to make a difference, there is always a role that you can play. And I really think everyone who is here is playing a big role in this. So thank you for listening and for being a part of this conversation. And let's continue embracing change, breaking down barriers, and building a world that values and includes everyone. Merci. Thank you.
I had the pleasure of being on the CWDO board, as I still am, and I'll tell you, it was just unbelievable working with Laurissa and her positive attitude and the blog that she wrote and so on. And I think that her words can really resonate with her. And I thank you, Laurissa, for expressing them so beautifully.
Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome. Marcia, do we have any questions for Laurissa?
We have Richard. Go ahead.
So thank you, Laurissa. Thank you for your presentation. I think the words of your presentation that resonate the most with me is your ending thing. Like we really need to think about, we really need to rethink our concepts of accessibility toward sort of greater inclusion. And because the something that the previous speaker Taba said about Go Transit not being accessible, and then because I thought, well, I'm sure they're accessible, like, but then I thought, oh, well, they're accessible. It's more accessible to someone with my abilities or my skill set, and so it's clearly not accessible to everyone with varying sort of varying requirements and needs as well too. Like like for her and what she requires to access transit independently, it's not there. So thank you for that, for those words, because it's something I hopefully will keep in mind as I do accessibility work and judge the level of accessibility when other people say something's not accessible, and hopefully I'll be able to kind of think about it in terms other than my own experiences as well.
This is Laurissa. Thank you so much, Richard. And yes, if I can add on to that just a little bit, the thing that really that shook me a little bit when I was reading policies is how like all the different types of disabilities will be put under the same umbrella when lived experiences are so different from one disability to another. And I think when we think of emergency preparedness or like a whole bunch of different policies, I feel like all the different disabilities, they can't be treated the same or they can't be responded to in the same way. And it's hard to find a big umbrella answer to disabilities that are so different. And someone was mentioning earlier having like a snowflake disabilities, like no one has the same lived experience. And I think policy should reflect that, and it would be a lot better on the ground if they did. So thank you for your message.
Okay, and I believe we have Joita wanting to contribute.
Thank you very much, Marcy. This is Joita, and I'd like to thank Laurissa for your presentation. I have a small question. I'm intrigued to hear you were a lawyer, and I've read a lot about the issues around access to justice, the lack of affordable legal representation and not having access to lawyers. That's part of the conversation around access to justice. But I wonder if you have some thoughts about how our justice system could be made more disability inclusive, not just for people with disabilities who might find themselves dealing with the legal system as plaintiffs or defendants, but also for people with disabilities who want to practice in the law. Thank you.
This is Laurissa again. That's a really good question. I will clarify that I'm not a lawyer yet. I'm in second year currently as a student, so I will clarify that before I answer. But I will say last year, I worked at the Legal Information Clinic at McGill, and I truly saw how much there's so many clients, there's so many people who need legal help, and these clinics, we do the best that we can, but there's always it's a little bit difficult with resources. And I think on the ground, what needs to be done is also going back to the basics and just, accessible, like physical accessibility. I'm thinking accessible court modes, remote participation, maybe. It's also about like assistive technology, sign language interpreters being available everywhere within the system. There's a list of things I could go through, but also expanding legal aid services. So having specialized support services would also be great. And I'm sure this exists, but as I said, there are a lot of clients and there's a lot of people who need legal help. So I think at the end of the day, it's about offering more resources to these systems that are helping. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joita. Chantal.
Hi, this is Chantal. Laurissa, do you find yourself in your role at the university to try to break down barriers and systemic issues that exist for people with disabilities, that it's also often the myth of assumption that for government, especially I find, but that for the major part of society, someone else will come to help. So for instance, in the event of an emergency, we may not have systems in place, but someone else will come to help. So they're shifting the responsibility to others as though that were acceptable. Do you find that you spend time sort of defending that kind of assumption, that kind of attitude?
So my work at the faculty is as part of the disability initiative that they started at the Center for Human Rights and Legal Pluralism. So I'm in charge of the events part. So we haven't done much, like myself as a co-coordinator, I wouldn't say that we've done much work structurally changing how the faculty works, but it's been more about like letting people know what resources are accessible to them and also opening the door to kind of sharing perspectives and resources that are available. So for example, earlier this week for the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, we had a booth in the atrium with resources available as to what you have access to as a student at the university if you have a disability. And these are certain centers that you can call for help with school or anything like that, but also just about community-wise. This right here is a coffee shop that employs persons with disabilities, and if you'd like to support their cause, here they are. Or for example, we spoke of, we spoke of there's this new Disney movie that came out and it is currently exam season, and we were telling students, hey, if you ever need a break, there's a new Disney movie that came out recently with amazing representation, go watch it. So it's about like opening the door for students also to kind of have those interactions. But I will say, I do not have a disability myself, and I've been trying to reach out as much as possible to learn more, and collaborating also with CWDO, speaking with them, asking questions with my mentors when I can, has been very helpful. But yes, very good question.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got no more hands. So. Oh, wait.
Go ahead, Marcia. It's me again.
It's Shelley again.
I have one, Marissa or Laurissa. Sorry, I don't know why I want to call you Marissa. Laurissa, at your school, have you seen people coming forward or talking to you guys about multiple chemical sensitivity? Because we're now 25% of the population. So I'm housebound because mine, I was a teacher, and overnight I died in front of my classroom. So I went from being able-bodied to housebound and not being able to function as a human being. Like, it's bad. And we're one of the disabilities that we fight so hard, and we are just ridiculed left, right, and center by people because they can't see it. So is that something you guys are seeing at McGill? Because McGill is actually one of our worst detriments. They came out with a terrible, inaccurate review a couple of years ago. That is why so many people with MCS have had to seek MAID. So I'm wondering if the school is becoming better.
That's a really good question, Shelley. I will say I haven't heard of it. I'm sorry. But I will look into it personally. Like I think it's very important for everyone to know about it. So yes, I will do personal research on this and also look into the school too. So thank you.
Chantal, your hand is still up. Is that legacy? Or did you have
Yes, it
another
is.
question?
No, I'm so sorry. I'll put it down. Thanks.
Not a problem. Okay. Joita.
Thanks again, Marcy. I wanted to ask you a question, Laurissa, about what you would say to people without disabilities who encounter people with disabilities but may not know how to respond or react. Not everyone has the opportunity to intern with CWDO and have a life-changing experience. Most people with without disabilities might encounter somebody in their neighborhood or on the bus. How can people without disabilities be better, more supportive allies to people with disabilities on a day-to-day basis? Thank you.
Great question. This is Laurissa. I honestly, I think it really starts with having conversations with persons with disabilities. I had quite a few before my internship. I will say that the big change with the internship is that those conversations were a bit more formalized. I had access to certain, I forget the word in English, des formations. Yes.
Trainings.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would say that was a big thing that I had access to with CWDO, but those are things that people can seek out on their own also. I think there are some that are available with like the government. There are others with Adobe Connect, for example, things that I wouldn't have thought about, but I did because of the internship. But just putting it out there, anyone can go out and get those certifications. And also just having those conversations and not being afraid of doing a little mistake, being corrected, and fixing it. And that's that. And you just have those conversations. I think that truly helps. But again, it's really just about asking others what they prefer to. So yeah, I think that's
Thank you.
my answer.
Okay, and we have one last, well, we'll take one last question, Peter.
Thanks, Marcy, and thank you, Laurissa. I know this is an event to celebrate persons with disabilities, but I'm curious from your perspective, Laurissa, and the perspective of a human rights and pluralism setting at McGill. I'm increasingly alarmed about the backlash in the US, Canada, around the world against immigration. And I'm just wondering how, as a community, and I'm talking about us as a community of persons with disabilities, us as a Canadian community, how do we respond to that? Because it seems to me the pendulum's gone way over to the other side. So I apologize if this is periphery, but I'm really curious of what you're hearing about that.
Great question. So again, I will say I'll answer with my expertise, but I am a student and I am part-time employed by the faculty, but I will say there are probably specialists who are more knowledgeable about like immigration, the backlash, and its link with the disability community.
Mhm.
I would say that one big person, like my brain all like goes right away to intersectionality and like emphasizing like the shared values, maybe kind of understanding how the link with being an immigrant and the link with being disabled and how all of that kind of interconnects, and maybe there would be better ways of approaching that in society. And of course, advocating for inclusive policies. So for support for immigrants, particularly those with disabilities. I'm thinking about like more collaboration with immigrant advocacy groups, maybe. But that's just from my perspective. Again, I haven't done research on this particularly, but that's kind of just where my brain goes.
Okay, thanks very much.
Really good question, Peter. Thank you.
Okay, so we have one more hand, and I think if the question is quick, we can, we're sort of running ahead of time a bit. So Hersha, you are definitely the last one.
Okay, thank you. This is not a question per se. I did enjoy your talk a lot, so thank you for that. It is a comment to the previous question that was made. So yeah, I am an immigrant. I did come here when I was 16. Didn't come from my own merit, in quotes. I was a dependent on my dad's visa, but because I was so much older and my family was quite open with me about immigration and our process and what we've been through, and we are pretty well connected in the Indian community who's immigrated So I can take that question on. The simple answer is that it is very hard as a person with a disability to immigrate on your own, so to speak. I've seen a lot of people from immigrant families who have disabilities, but they were more dependent in that immigration sense on their parents or their relatives' visas, and not necessarily immigrants who kind of applied on their own. Yeah, if you're a refugee, that's a different story. But for economic reasons, if you're immigrating, there's a point-based system. And unless if you come from a country, especially like from a developing country, having, I don't know, an undergraduate education or a master's degree and a high-paying job in your own country, you don't necessarily want to immigrate if you have a disability because you're well settled there. And most of the time, though, it's very hard to get all of that in a system that's kind of stacked against you over there. So yeah, that's my long-winded answer. I hope I was able to answer the other person's question.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if you come here, like, you know, as a person with a disability, then that's different, right? But yeah, that was my answer. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for all of your questions and really inspiring questions too. I think that everyone will find the recording very, very interesting and inspiring. Next speaker is Hanna Leavitt. There she is. And she's an author and writer, and she will talk about her journey through accessible publishing. Hanna, the floor is yours. We don't hear you yet, Hanna.
You're muted, Hanna.
There will be questions and answers after Hanna speaks as well. And we have an entertainment break after that, and we have more speaking to do too. Hanna, you can go ahead.
You're still muted, Hanna.
How's that? Am I still
There
here?
we
we
go.
There we
Yay.
go. Okay. Wow, that was a little scary.
That's all right. We got you now.
Okay. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Marcy. Thanks, everyone, for participating in this great day today. My name's Hanna Leavitt. I'm an author and writer from Victoria, BC. And I started on my vision loss journey when I was 10 years old, and it's still continuing to today. As a child of immigrant parents, I learned quickly and how to self-advocate because no one was going to do it if I didn't do it. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the changes that have taken place over the decades in the audiobook world for persons with vision loss and for persons with other learning disabilities too that utilize those tools. So Dick Clark once said that music is the soundtrack to our lives. I'd like to amend that statement a little bit, especially for visually impaired people and users of audiobooks, that music and audiobooks are the soundtracks of our lives. So we've gone through myriad of changes in formats. We started out with vinyl records. We moved on to reel, regular cassettes, 4-track cassettes, and now we're into the downloadable digital world. So the process of getting books has also changed a lot. in the olden days, when I was quite young, you would make a list of books that you wanted to read, and you would either email it into the library or phone it in and order up your books. And then you would wait and wait and wait and hope that they would come. So that you always had lots of interruptions in your book opportunities for reading, because you might finish a book and it could be weeks or months before the next book would show up. So waiting was a big problem. Nowadays, we have instant downloads, which is fabulous. Just walk over to your computer and download a book and you're in business. So one of the other major changes in audio formats as well is we used to have volunteer readers read the books. And we've all had lots of experience with good readers and bad readers and refusing to listen to a book because the reader wasn't very good. But nowadays we have actual professional voice actors reading books. So there's been a huge shift in the quality of the book readers and our ability to enjoy them more, because they are professional readers. So I've used all these formats in my personal life and in my education as well. And it's been a challenge at times because, as most of you well know, access to printed material in a timely manner has been and still continues to be a barrier in lots of environments. I didn't know it then, but my writing experience at university kind of mirrored the changes in my education, and excuse me, the changes were kind of mirrored between the publishing world and my education. In my writing, I would start with a rough draft and I would edit it and edit it and edit it until I felt really strongly that I had a good finished product. And publication world's a little bit like that too. They they keep trying to get it right, improving little by little as we go along. And we never quite know, but one day we do reach that special place. And for me, it was in my last year of getting my writing degree at the University of Victoria. And I remember one day proofreading a document, an article that I'd written for one of my classes. And I remember actually saying out loud to myself, this is different. And I proofread lots of my work before, and it was just a matter of proofreading it and for grammatical correctness and diction and all that. But this was different. It really was different, so much so that I said it aloud. And what I finally realized was that all those little increments in my writing craft that I'd employed over the years and practiced over the years had finally shifted and coalesced into this thing called my personal writing style. And I think once you've achieved something really genuine like that, there's just no going back again. And I think that's the way we are with our audiobook experience as well, as we continue to improve with voice actors and different delivery systems. We're just never going to go back to cassette tapes, guys. I don't know about you, but I'm sure not. But anyways, so as I mentioned before, I'm a writer. Through academic connections at the University of Victoria, I was approached by Orca Book Publishing of North America to write a book about disabilities. And they didn't know anybody offhand, just through their connections. So they approached the university and said, is there a student gone through here? Do you guys know of anybody that could do this job, could write a book about disabilities? And it's basically a sort of a primer, introduction to disabilities, and resources, models of looking at disability, a little bit of everything for the young adult reader. And the university said, yep, we know somebody, Hanna Leavitt, and she's your person. And so they got together with me and we signed a contract. And in 2021, my first book called The Disability Experience, Working Toward Belonging was published. And I wondered at the time, how big a market would a book like this have? And the other thing I wondered, it was my first book, and I was just a little concerned about being pigeonholed as a disabled writer, because there's more to me than my visual acuity, as is most of you out there too that have, well, whether you have a vision problem or not, we're more than our visual acuity. So my first book, came out in April of 2021. And my big experience with Orca was they really valued the lived experience that I brought to the book. They were looking for that in a writer specifically. And the disability expertise that I brought to the table was also a real bonus for them. Most of the things we talked about, they'd never thought about before. So for once in my life, I was in a position where my expertise had real value to my contractor. And the book, even though it's 3 years later now, almost 4 years actually, continues to sell well today. And there's something about sales that affirms the value of a story. So I'm becoming a bigger and bigger believer in my own story just because of that as well. The book found its way onto the bookshelves at the Sela Library. And when I first looked it up, I saw it there as a synthetic audio file. And as a first-time writer, I didn't expect it to be in human narrated voice. So I was a little disappointed, but it wasn't unexpected. But enough people called in and requested it be redone in human narrated audio that it was. So now I'm really pleased to say that my first book is available in both print and audio. So I can send all my vision impaired friends there to look it up too if they want and be able to access rather than just saying, sorry, oh, it's not out in that format yet. So that was my first book. And my second book is again with Orca Books. They really valued the experience of the sales and the success of the first book. So my second book is called Not So Different, 20 Stories about 20 People with Disabilities. It introduces young readers ages 10 to 14 to people with disabilities. I purposely depicted them in the context of their own homes so that these young readers could understand what a day in the life of a person with a disability looks like and what disability looks and feels like. So it's going to be released in this coming year, so we'll see how well that does. Partway through the writing of Not So Different, something changed again in the publishing industry this time, which was fabulous. I got a call from my editor saying they wanted to publish my book and have it coincide with the Accessible Canada Act's Born Accessible initiative, where publishers are required to simultaneously publish print and audio versions of books. So no more waiting around for someone to get around to recording it. So I was thrilled about that. And Orca's hired a staff person on there to coordinate all the aspects of creating this Born Accessible book. For those of you who don't know the term, Born Accessible is about getting it right the first time. Normally publishers print books and then people come to them and you buy the book and you tear it apart and you scan it in and get it into some kind of digital format so that we can listen to it. But this is about getting it right the first time, having it come out in both formats simultaneously. So it's part of the Accessible Canada Act, and publishers are required to conform to that by 2026. So I'm looking forward to the launch of my book in both versions. They'll have equal status for once in my short writing history anyways. But this phenomenon of a book being released in both formats isn't unique, although it's only happened once before that I can remember. And I want you to think back to 1997, when there were two people who burst on the literary scene, one real and one fictional, J.K. Rowling's and Harry Potter. And for those of you who don't know about audiobooks, but I mean, typically we wait a long time. We, in the past, have waited a long time to get our hands on books, and the Harry Potter series was no different. But in 1997, when her last book in the series was released, there was a huge push on, and they did meet the demand of getting the print version and the audio versions out at the same time. So for the first time in my life, I had access to a best-selling book the same time that somebody else had access to it. That was a really unprecedented event for both publishers and readers alike. So I'm very pleased that my second book's going to have equal status with the audiobook and the print version. I didn't really, when I heard about Born Accessible and that this initiative was going to mean simultaneous releases of print and audiobooks, I honestly didn't really think it would happen in my lifetime. I thought, well, that's a good thing to work toward, but it isn't going to happen for me. But so in front of all of you, I have to say, shame on me. I didn't believe it, but it's true for me, which I didn't expect. So I just also wanted to mention that even though I've gone through some of the major events in audiobook changes over the course of the last, well, century, really. I wanted to ask you if you feel like, have we really arrived in terms of being a part of an inclusive audio experience out there? I know there's great book sources like audible.ca. It seems like audiobooks are kind of gone trendy now, and for once we're in the right place at the right time. But I wonder about, like, what will our listening experience look like in the future? Like, is AI going to play a role in reading books to us and not necessarily getting it right all the time? But I'm really curious to see what the future is going to look like. So I would ask you to stay tuned and stay committed to the advocacy it takes to keep the forward momentum of these kind of initiatives happening. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Hannah.
Oh,
Sorry, Marcia.
I just figured I would start the
Right.
roll, but go ahead.
Do we have any questions for Hannah? And I really think that it's now something that we will pay attention to as far as looking for the audiobooks when we know that the video or the book, the best-selling book or the current book is already available. Thanks. Go ahead, Marcia.
Okay, so we have Carly and then Richard.
Yes, I was wondering, could I have maybe the information about sort of like the contact info for Orca, since I'm actually a budding writer and eventually I do want to get published?
Right. They're available, just their full name is Orca Books or Orca Books of North America, and they're based in Victoria, BC. They were all throughout North America though. So if you just Google Orca Books of North America, you'll find a branch near you, look for a branch near you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Not near us. We're in New Brunswick.
Oh, okay. Well, they do say North America. You're still in North America.
Okay, Richard.
Hi, it's Richard speaking. Thank you, Hannah, for your presentation. It was funny when you were talking about all the different formats, and I think I've used all of those formats except for the reel-to-reel cassette, reel-to-reel. But I think like you're right. Like today we're closer to being definitely a part of the whole audio experience. But like the downloadable audio, I think poses some challenges for the older people in society. Like I think there's still a lot of people that have lost their sight later in life that are really having trouble struggling with downloadable audio, and especially, and so they're still used to actually holding their cassette player or their daisy player in their hands, and I don't think it's getting better, but I think that's been part of the challenge of the conversion to downloadable audio. But like the Born Accessible initiative, I didn't realize that there was a deadline for the publishing industry to actually do it, because it's something that a lot of people have been working on for a long time. Like NELS did a lot of the National Network of Equitable Library Services did a lot of work on that sort of Born Accessible idea when they actually had funding and developed the accessiblepublishing.ca website to sort of guide small publishers into making books more accessible. The other advantage of Born Accessible is the ease of which it's going to be to create on-demand Braille as well too, because Born Accessible, the source digital file is easily convertible to any format pretty much on demand. So which is going to be great. My question for you is your second book. Do you like, it sounds like a perfect thing that could be marketed to school age children, like, and to be used as part of sort of disability curriculum in schools. And I'm just wondering if you've had any feedback yet from maybe from any school boards or the Ministry of Education. Like, it'd be interesting. Actually, I guess once your manuscript's published, it'd be interesting to see what they think about it.
Right. Thanks, Richard. The first book, we got a lot of feedback. Orca Books is like throughout North America, so they're really tied in with the library and the school systems. And I had a number of emails from different educators saying how pleased they were to see my book come out, because they have curriculum that they try to incorporate disability studies sort of into it, and they didn't really have a text that they could go by to develop that curriculum. So it has been well accepted in the academic world as a really good resource. Like I say, Orca is very connected to the library system as well. They're in really, excellent contact with librarians and the teachers who tell them, hey, we need books on this topic, or we need books on that topic, because we can't teach it in school because, they may not represent it fairly in the classroom. So they're always looking for more and better books. This book is, the second book is more about sort of sort of a human more of a human context, featuring them in their homes and the challenges of, this one little girl goes to school, but it takes her about 20 minutes to brush her teeth, and, that long again to get dressed for bed, and, real stories that like 10-year-old kids would want to know about, answers to questions they would want to know about. So, I don't know. I haven't. Orca hasn't. They seem to really know their marketplace. So I'm going with them that this book will be well accepted. When we did research looking for other books like it, we found one book, but it was all, the rehashing of so many other stories, like Beethoven being deaf and Helen Keller, and just sort of rehashing all those traditional historical inspirational characters. So we're really hopeful for this book.
Okay, I've got 3 people, and I think given the timing, I think that should do it. So I've got Joita, and then I've got Shelley, and then I've got Victoria. So in that order.
Hi, it's Joita speaking. Hannah, thank you for your talk. I read many disability memoirs. A lot of them are self-published. And I think it's great that people have the option to self-publish because it gets their story out there. But of course, if you're self-published, I would imagine there's less support for authors and less exposure for the book, and possibly less opportunities to make the book available in different accessible formats. Where do you land on self-publication as a way for authors with disabilities to get their stories out there?
Well, it's certainly an option. And if you don't have sort of a network of people, is certainly a good way to get started. It's a hard way to get started because, like you said, sales, everything's up to you to make it happen. So not only do you have to write the book, you have to publish it, you have to edit it, you have to wear every hat in that publishing world. I guess my best advice is to get involved in the writing world in your area, if you've got even book clubs, if you don't have a writers group, get involved with that and just continually research opportunities out there. Some people are natural salespeople and have no problem doing that. But for those of us who aren't natural salespeople, it is a challenge. And I'm really very fortunate that I got on with an editor right from the get-go. I do have a memoir that's in the works as well, but it's with an editor. So it should be a bit better. But I know I read a lot of disability bios. I just find them so interesting about learning everybody's stories, because while we all have challenges, it's still great to hear a story and learn something from somebody else's experience.
Hey, Shelley. Thanks, Joita.
Thank you. Very quick question. Are the books also, do they translate these books into French? Do you know?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't know about that.
Because I'm joining the curriculum board, and one of the things I'm really pushing for under health and personal growth is actual disability studies within the curriculum. And this is going to be the thing, guides or sources. So this would be just perfect for New Brunswick. So here's hoping. Okay. And I find it very funny that books will be available in this format. We cannot get the provincial government to make their websites accessible to people in New Brunswick in English or French, or follow any building code laws or just about anything else. So yeah, this should be interesting. But now that I know this, it's more power to go after them. So thank you for the great information.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
And Victoria, you're the final person in this section, this part of the.
Yeah, I just
event.
want to comment on the question raised about how far the audiobook has come. It's improving slowly, and it's still very hard as a person with vision loss to access audiobook. And I've been going through a spoken screen reader, which in itself could be annoying. Perhaps in the near future, there will be a universal library card across Canada, because some audiobook is available in BC library, but not available in Toronto. So in the near future, universal library card for people with vision loss or people with disability to be able to continue to enjoy books and content. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, it's tricky when library services are provincial in some provinces and not in others. How do you streamline something when the funding mechanisms don't support a sort of a unified approach to a problem? So advocacy, I guess, that's all we can say, is more advocacy.
Yes, I'd like to thank just finding the unmute and mute button, right? Okay. So we'd like to thank everybody for all of your questions to Hanna. And I know that we're going to do some more research as an organization to find out more information about all of these topics that our speakers have talked about today. But now you can sit back and relax because we have an entertainment break for you. We have some musical entertainment. Sara Hillis, she plays the harp beautifully, and her voice is like an angel. Sara, you go ahead.
All right, so my name is Sara Hillis, and I have been playing the Celtic harp for, 25 years, let's say, roughly speaking. And doesn't mean I play it well, but we do our best. And so I will get it ready now here. Excuse the noise. Oh, goodness, it can't sit by the desk. There we are. And I'm going to just play a folk song and a song that I wrote, both Irish in nature. So we'll begin with a lovely piece, which is kind of an Irish version of The Water is Wide in a sense. It's called Carrig Fergus, and it's just really quite beautiful. And Marcy inspired me to play it. I wish I was in Carrickfergus only for nights, in Ballygrand I would swim over the deepest ocean only for nights in Ballygrand. But the sea is wide and I can't get over, and neither have I wings to fly. Oh, if I could find me a handsome boatman to ferry me over to my love and I. Now in Kilkenny it is reported there's marble stones there as black as ink, with gold and silver I would transport her, but I'll sing no more now till I get a drink. I'm drunk today, but then I'm seldom sober, a handsome rover from town to town. Oh, but I am sick now, my days are over. Come all you young lads and lay me down. I wish I was in Carrickfergus only for nights in Ballygrand. Just tune this. Ah, that's the problem. Another thing about the harp is that it always likes to go out of tune. So if you'll just bear with me 1 second. Get our a little tuning wrench out. And make sure we're on the right string. Yes, this harp is actually made with zither pins. So harp tuning pins are a lot larger than these. So you have to purchase a specific tuning key and not just any old harp tuning key, because that doesn't work. It's like an Allen key, basically. Right, like with your roller skates when you were a kid, right? All right, this is my setting of a poem by William Butler Yeats called The Lake Isle of Innisfree, about a lovely little island in the county of Sligo, Ireland. Yeats was feeling a bit trapped in the city, and he was fantasizing about what he would do if he went to this lovely island. Let's do this correctly. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I will have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow. Dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings, there midnight's all a glimmer, and a nude of purple glow, and the evening full of the linnet swings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement grey. I hear it in the deep heart's core. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow. Goodness. Dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings, there midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and the evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement grey. I hear it in the deep heart's core. I hear it in the deep heart's core. Ooh, yes, lovely. See, that was lovely. More out of tuneness, but you know. Listen to that. Oh yes, lovely, great. But yes, it's fun to do, and thanks very much. Those are the 2 pieces I had prepared. Thanks for having me, and thanks to Marcy for asking me to do this.
That was absolutely beautiful. Your harp playing, your voice, and the words of the song that you wrote. We'll continue with our speeches now, our presentations. And our next speaker is Peter Field. And he is going to talk about the Triple Vision podcast, which we all know and love, and the changes that have happened over the years to the podcast and to what he's doing. So Peter, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Pat. I'm just going to set a quick timer here because I want to make sure I leave time for questions because I can talk about this forever. Hang on. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Okay, well, it's a pleasure to be here with you celebrating International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And it's really great to sit back and hear the stories because that's what Triple Vision is all about. For those who aren't familiar with the podcast, Triple Vision is a podcast which tells the past, present, and future of blindness in Canada, and we say one story at a time. So, how did we start out? Well, I lived in Ottawa and worked in Ottawa for a long time, and a good friend of mine is Charlene Ayotte. Charlene, or Charlie as we know her, is well known to the community of people who are blind. And occasionally on a Friday night, I would go to Charlie's place and we would sit and we would have a couple of scotches and we would talk about how we could change the world for the better. We would talk about universal design, and Charlie would say, well, you know, no one's documented our history. No one's told our history from the point of view of who we are. And I'd like to change that. And I would go home and I'd forget about all the great things that we talked about and all the problems that we'd resolved that night. But this particular idea remained until I finished my career in Ottawa in 2019, and Charlie said, great, well, you can write the book. And I thought, okay, that's a pretty daunting task. I'll look around for some funding and found that there really wasn't much funding for a book, but funding could be possible for podcasts. And that's how we got the idea of doing a podcast. The next thing that we needed was a team. So we assembled a team of David Best, who does a lot of our technical work. Hanna Leavitt, who you just heard, was referred to us as a blind historian. Charlie, of course. And of course, our friend John Ray, once he got wind of the fact that we were doing this, did not want to be left out. And you can't say no to John. So we brought John into the team as well. Of course, there's been many changes since John has passed away, sadly. Hanna is in the background still helping us out, but is no longer doing any interviewing. And we brought in Carolyn Bordeaux and Blaine Ducher doing the editing. The other thing that we did early on is I went to AMI and I said, okay, here's an idea. And they said, great idea. We're doing podcasts now. We'd love to have you as part of our podcast feed. We got great support from AMI in terms of a producer and someone to help us editing, and away we went. So what were the stories that we wanted to tell? Well, we went way back to 1918, and we talked to a professor at University of Ottawa, Serge Derflinger, who wrote a book called Veterans with a Vision. And these were veterans from World War I who were blinded there, rehabilitated in England, came back. And these were people who were professional before losing their sight and came back and wanted some kind of support or really established their own network on how they could be supported now that they were without vision, without sight anyway. And many of these people eventually led to the formation of the CNIB. In fact, one was a CNIB's CEO right until the 1960s. We then followed that up with interview with Jim Sanders, former CEO of CNIB, to get the history of CNIB, and that was enough because we weren't we were a podcast dedicated to telling our story. And perhaps this is a good time to say that if you're going to tell the story of the community of people who are blind, deafblind, partially sighted in Canada, you're going to end up bumping up against the CNIB at some point. So keep that thought in mind. We covered colonialism. We covered eugenics, and I would love to go into that in a lot more detail. It's frightening what was happening in Canada in the 1930s around eugenics, I should say. We covered library services, part of which Hanna has covered so well this morning. Advocacy, education, and employment. So that was a busy year for us. That was our first year. We had a podcast twice a month, so every 2 weeks. And as I said, we're well supported by AMI in going through that. In January 2023, we started our year 2, and Charlie brought to us a concept called the danger of a single story. So what happens when somebody else tells your story? They're not going to get it right. This was actually a TED Talk by a Nigerian woman who said when she was growing up, she read stories about English school children wearing English school children's clothes and eating apples. And that was definitely not her story in Nigeria. And we thought, well, this is really appropriate because has our story's been told by others throughout the years. And what is that story? And this is when we started on a 4-part series on what we called governance. How we've been governed, so to speak, on how programs and services have been decided for us. And of course, we started back with the history of that and talked to 2 individuals who were part of the CNIB governance board who told us how that operated. Then we did a bit of a check to see what the community thought of CNIB governance, and we talked to 2 people in our community, Albert Ruel and Mary Ellen Gavius, who are well known to our community, and they talked about what their perspective was on CNIB governance. And then we balanced that out with an interview with Bob Fenton, who is the chair of the foundation side of CNIB, the chair of their board, and Angela Bonfanti, who was the chief operating officer, now the CEO, to talk to them about where CNIB was going, what they were doing. So everything was good. We had a really well-balanced approach to this. But there's one more piece that needed to fall in place. This is about April 2023. And about February 2023, there was a CBC news report that CNIB's fundraising, specifically for guide dogs, but fundraising in general. And CNIB was raising questions about why of every dollar that went to CNIB, 51 cents went back into fundraising and only 49 cents went into programming. And they got this information from a group called Charity Intelligence. Charity Intelligence is a nonprofit which audits charities, 800 charities across the country, and basically issues a report card. And they'd issued a report card that CNIB at the time was a 2-star charity, and they sort of came up with these numbers. And we thought, great, well, we got to talk to her. That's part of the story, right? That's part of the facts. So we interviewed Kate, and the podcast went out, and then it disappeared. And we thought, what happened to our podcast? And I emailing AMI, and they said, well, just we're checking some things out. Let us know. And it turned out that this podcast did not go down well with CNIB. They said there were factual inaccuracies. It was inflammatory. And in fact, they sent a letter to AMI saying, if you don't take that podcast down, we're going to pursue legal action. So of course, AMI took it down without any consultation with us. We had some meetings with them, and the upshot of the meetings was that they would, going forward, vet our podcasts for accuracies. Always good to have an editor, I guess. Then I met with John Rafferty of the then CEO of CNIB to ask to have a discussion about what happened. And John sort of reiterated the same thing, saying, well, we don't mind people expressing opinions about CNIB, but we can't, the facts were inaccurate. So I'm not going to go into that because that would take a long time to explain. But as a team, we heard that and we said, okay, well, if there's no problem expressing opinions, then we're going to do just that. We're going to express our opinion of what we perceived as censorship. So next podcast, as a group, we spent 10 minutes talking about what had happened. And guess what? That podcast got pulled down. And at the time, with a short email from AMI that said, thank you very much. We don't want to be part of this anymore. So we're terminating our relationship with you. So that was fine. We then had the opportunity to go out on our own and exercise our independence, and we started to reimagine what the world would look like now that we were on our own, and reimagine what the world could look like if it was universally designed. That's what we did. We reimagined rehab services, healthcare, inclusive tech, communications, inclusive design, and then human rights. So the end of year 2, beginning of this year, our 3rd year, we turned our attention to what could the human rights system look like if it was designed differently. After that, we got a little bit more personal in terms of who we are and our community. We did talk about book clubs. I talked about what it was like to be a blind hobby farmer living in the interior of British Columbia. We interviewed Charlie on her last day of working for Alliant, our supporter, the people who provide us the funds for the podcast. In the fall, we did a really great interview, I think, with a woman named Shivali Sajani on the intersection of race and disability. And we just finished one of 2 parts on the impact of organized religion in our first episode, The Early Church, on people who are blind, deafblind, and partially sighted. So that's the past, that's the present. Where's the future? Well, I think it's important for us to get back to the idea of that book and to document the history of our community that way. I'd love it if we could get more frequent and a little bit more edgy, and have enough resource to do that, to drill deep. We are starting to run into a bit of a financial crunch right now, so that's definitely going to be part of our future. And finally, our future is about where you want to go as the listener and as part of this community. So we started off as a podcast about the community and about the stories of the community. So I'd love to know where this community and I think other communities would like to go. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'll leave you with our email address, triplevision21, triplevision21@gmail.com, and you can certainly reach us through that, but happy to take any questions. That was 3 years of podcast in about 11 minutes.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I think most people didn't know, the history, the complete history. So we're glad to know that. If you've just joined us, you heard Peter Field talking about the Triple Vision podcast and the history of it. Marcia, over to you.
Hey, so far I've got Hersha. You're
Right, I
muted.
was talking and then I realized that I was on mute. Anyway, yeah, it's great to hear from you about the Triple Vision podcast. My question is that well, I'll follow up with a few statements that I have, then I'll ask a question at the end. Yeah, it was very enlightening, let's just say, when I heard how much money from the CNIB goes to their fundraising.
Mhm.
Personal opinion, it is quite wasteful, and I didn't know the backstory behind this whole thing. So thank you for bringing this whole thing to light. As somebody who is visually impaired but not so involved in these kinds of fields, I didn't really know that it was that wasteful. But my question to you is that, do you find that, not just as a person with a disability, but as a podcaster in general, do you find that a lot of podcasters kind of censor themselves, so to speak, so that they can get those funding opportunities and get money from the bigger grants or the corporations or what have you?
That's a really great question. And I don't really know what other podcasters do, but what I do know about the podcasting medium is that it evolved in order to avoid that kind of censorship. So it has become a very democratic medium where if somebody has something to say or want to get their message out, then they can bypass broadcasters who would certainly, I think, censor what people are saying. And people, I think, at least the perception is that they're allowed to be a bit more free in what they say. I don't know what happens if you get into sort of big sponsorships and whether that, as soon as that gets involved, whether that changes the landscape there. But I was recently listening to an interview by Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if people know him. He's a Canadian, I think living in the US now, but sociologist who wrote a bunch of books. And he's now turned almost exclusively, he said, to podcasting because he's found it's a much better medium to get his message out than a book. So that I found that quite interesting. I'm gonna just jump in, waiting for another question to say, I don't think we would ever say, and we never said on our podcast that anything the CNIB does in terms of its allocates its funding is wasteful. Diane Bergeron, I could get in trouble for calling Diane out now, but anyway, she did go on CBC to say you have to spend money to make money. The amount, I think that sort of ratio has dropped. It's not as drastic as it was. And I was told by John Rafferty at the time, the reason why it was so high was due to COVID keeping people on. So anyway, that's a bit more of a backstory for you, perhaps.
Okay, and we've got Shelley.
Surprise, surprises me. I want to thank you. What was exposed through CNIB is something that I talk about quite a bit, which is the Disability Industrial Collective. And I think it's a real problem. We see too many third-party groups who provide services, who get way too much of the pot. We see way too many charitable organizations. I mean, I gave money 2 years ago to Red Cross from the fires. I'm in Atlantic, Canada. Every month, even though I called so many times to be taken off the list, I get these envelopes with teddy bears, and I'm like, the $100 I gave is long gone and then some. And it's like, so how much of this money that we're giving to be good people goes back to, especially in disability organizations, to giving a lot of time able-bodied people jobs to look like they're doing something to help us when they're really not. And I think it's a real problem that we all need to take a look at and take on. And kudos to anyone that's bringing it up, because they work some hard to shut us up because they don't want us exposing it. But I think it's a real problem. And even I look at what Charity Village did to the We organization, and they were proven wrong. They were, the We organization was completely exonerated, and yet nobody's apologized. And all that's happened is our youth have lost a good place to start to learn about being responsible and giving back and working together as one to make our world what we want it to be. But in some cases, they are right. And I think that there has to be more accountability on all these groups for giving them money, and they're supposed to be helping us. And are they, or are they helping themselves? I don't know. So thank you for bringing light to it.
Well, thank you. And I just want to respond to that. It was a really good comment. The podcast has never been about going after a particular organization. But as I said, if we're going to tell our history as a community from the experience of the community, it is going to bump up against how it's been told by the social service agency. So it's not a gotcha podcast, but it's about here's how we are different. Here's how we have evolved as a community. And here's how we have evolved despite what has not been a glamorous history from the social service agency side. So thank you for your comment.
Okay, Pat, I've got no one else, so we can move on.
Okay, great. So we're going to introduce Shelley Petit, and I hope I have the name right, and she is the chair of the New Brunswick Coalition of People with Disabilities. Do I have that right, Marcia? Okay.
Yeah.
And when we did the tech checks, her voice was so upbeat and so positive that we really felt that she would be a great closing speaker. And so, Shelley, the floor is yours.
Oh, no pressure on me. So thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm going to do a quick presentation today on embracing change and about why we as persons with disabilities need to be included from the get-go. I know there's quite a few people that are blind or low vision, so I'm a female with short brown hair. I have glasses on, and I'm wearing a black and sort of whitish paisley shirt. And my mouth is my biggest asset. So, and I'm coming to you today from the unceded territories of the Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, and Passamaquoddy peoples of New Brunswick, who have been very gracious to continue to share these gorgeous lands with us, even with what our previous premier tried to do to them. All right. So this first slide is just talking about how we should never be an afterthought. And there's a couple quotes on here that I reiterate quite often. One, that disability is not a bad word. And we need to not be afraid to say, yep, I am a person with a disability. I have an invisible disability. In 2019, I went to work one day as a teacher. I was okay on Friday. On Monday, I returned to school. I collapsed in front of my classroom. I died in front of my classroom. I am alive today because there was an ambulance across the street who was able to restart my heart, and it's from chemical exposures. There was a lot of mold in the school where I taught. A lot of our infrastructure in New Brunswick is really old. And that's when I found out I have MCS. I'm now housebound. If I do go out, I have to wear a gas mask and a Tyvek suit over my clothing. It's not fun. But Zoom, I can do a lot of, and I do a lot. So it's given me purpose again. And this is another quote I love. The only special need that I have, or that we all have, is just to be loved and accepted the way we are. People need to stop trying to change us. We are too often denied the right to health. We need to be included in our communities without stigma. We need to have equitable access to services like transportation and education. We need to have access to affordable health care, and we need to be able to make informed decisions about our health care, not being told what we have to do. Because disability doesn't have to be an obstacle to success. And that's right from Stephen Hawking. So I wanted to start with, in New Brunswick, well, across Canada, there are two ways really to define disability. We have the social model and the medical model. The medical model is that old way, right? You go, you see a doctor, a medical professional, they do some tests, they write up a little prescription or note, they say, yes, you are a person with a disability. Okay, so what happens to the huge percentage of people without a doctor, without access to health care? Or like me, that have an invisible disability, where there are 2 doctors in Canada who are able to diagnose it, and it's inconvenient for them, for doctors. People don't like when I say you can't wear perfume or scents, or you can't come in our house because you use laundry detergent, or you burn candles. People do not like that. So it becomes a problem. And it puts the burden back on the person. So that's why we prefer at the New Brunswick Coalition of Persons with Disabilities, the social model. We really push for that, where we look at the outside world and we say, it is the outside world that makes us disabled. Our community is what puts up the barriers to stop us, right? When these barriers are there, whether the barrier is a lack of accessible transit, so you cannot get to school, you cannot get to work, or it's they don't clean snow off the sidewalks, so you cannot go out in your wheelchair, your walker, your cane. If you're low vision or blind, it's dangerous. If you a mom with or a dad with a stroller, any of these, the snow is so dangerous. That leaves us with fewer opportunities in the world, right? We can't work, or it's harder to get to work. If we can't work, then we have to go back to the government and live in legislated poverty. Not cool. It limits our ability to have a good social life. And all I ever say on this to able bodies is, think back to week number 3 of the pandemic. All right, do I have to say anything else? No, because you were all like, oh, I can't do this. Well, we have to do it every day. We have to defend when we're asking social development in New Brunswick to have a paid drive somewheres at night. Well, where are you going at night? None of your damn business, I say. But they don't like that. We have fewer opportunities for proper health and medical services. And when we have to delay treatment, it costs more, and then it limits the work opportunities and the social access. And that's not right. We should not have to pay those bills. When the system doesn't start with us at the center, it just doesn't work. People are supposed to be the centers of these. This is a busy, busy poster, I know, and I'm not even going to try to describe it. I just like it. It was done by the Large Disability Law Group for the 2018 International Day for Persons with Disabilities. And it just has so many of the topics covered by the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. You know, that we should have, imagine, an adequate standard of living, that we should be able to participate in public life and political life. That, I don't know, crazy thought, we can get married without facing the potential loss of all of our benefits. That we could live independently. Or that we could participate in cultural life, recreation, leisure, and sport. It's a lovely poster, and it is fabulous. I do really, really like it. So now back to New Brunswick, good old New Brunswick. So if you don't know, New Brunswick is pretty much #1 for all the wrong reasons. We have the worst legislative poverty for people with disabilities. You get a whole whopping $918 a month to live on. Our rents are pretty much the same as Ontario now. We have people who are living on 1 piece of bread a day. We can't get to food banks because they're not accessible. We have communities where you cannot get accessible transit to go for dialysis because you're allowed 4 trips a month. So screw that. We're changing that. We will not tolerate that. The people are worth more. My members are worth more. And we're going to change this. And where we're really focusing right now is housing, because we have a new government, a new premier, the first ever female premier. She gets disability, and every one of her candidates had to meet with me before they were allowed to run to make sure that they weren't ableist in nature. So I have great hope that these folks are all going to embrace the change that we need and make New Brunswick #1 for the right reasons. So I want to talk about housing for a few minutes because it's near and dear to my heart. New Brunswick has like 880,000 people. We have 11,000 plus names on a housing list. And our previous premier didn't think it was a problem. And that's why he's now retired. finally reopened what they call the New Brunswick Housing Corporation. These folks don't even have access to proper lists of who needs housing. You have to call in every year or they take you off the list. They lose your name. And now we found out that if you're not involved with one of the in-group third-party service providers, your name gets removed off the list. You won't get housing. Now, how is that okay? It's not. So I have that information now. That's going to be exposed. In New Brunswick, they give out 5 new rent subsidies per sector. We have 6 sectors per year, maximum. So if I was waiting for a rent subsidy today to help me, I'd only have to wait another 300 years to get one. I wonder if I'll make it. Probably not. These are problems. And in New Brunswick, the law currently says that new builds only have to have 5% accessible units, but yet we have the second highest disability population at 35.3%. And then we have the second highest senior population at 22%. So we have close to 60% of people who need today or will need soon an accessible unit. And 5% of what they're building is accessible. That's not okay. So what they do is they build new units that are not accessible, and then they go in and rip it apart and try to retrofit it. Not good for the environment, not good financially, takes a long time. Stupid, in my opinion. It's just stupid. So why? So thankfully, the new premier, I don't have to ask anymore, where's UD? The new premier, she's building up to 30,000 new builds with credits back for developers, only if they're universal design. We have some good news coming our way, New Brunswick. That's so cool. Because if we keep pushing, we force them to embrace the change we need. And then we get into lovely public builds, schools, hospitals, governments. So we were really one of the first provinces, one of the first 4. And a lot of those same buildings that existed when Canada was formed are still here, and we use them every day. So those are not accessible, and nobody wants to make them accessible because it might make them not pretty anymore. But now they're also doing new builds, new schools, new hospitals, et cetera, without accessibility. Last February, as I was discussing at a legislative meeting for the new accessibility committee about why are they doing this? This is crazy. Let's just start building the new builds accessible. They said, well, do those types of plans even exist? And I'm like, yes. And New Brunswick would not be the first ones to use them. They just do not get why we need full inclusion, or maybe they don't want to understand why we need full inclusion. So then we brought up human rights and they got a little nervous. Again, the new government is stopping the current builds on the 2 schools and the hospital. They're going back to say, okay, what do we need to do to make them accessible? And then they're coming to disability groups, all of them, to vision, to mental health groups, to hearing, to mobility, to environmental disabilities, to make sure it works. Because they're starting to realize, or they just want to shut me up, I'm not sure, I don't care, that if they don't check with us, it's not going to work. So they are slowly embracing change. The previous governments thought if you build it, they will come. Well, it won't work if we have a disability. They looked at minimum standards that overlooked most of our needs. Then we would complain and go, where's the accessibility? It doesn't meet standards. Then they would go in, make a partial attempt to make it accessible as an afterthought. We must refuse to be an afterthought. We deserve better than being an afterthought. We will no longer tolerate always being an afterthought. And I think we've gotten through to this new government. I feel so hopeful. Because as we tell them, these actions have consequences, and it is time for change. Disability impacts all of us. When we cannot work, when we cannot participate in social life, when we have poor health outcomes, then it costs the community. Many of us want to work. We need to work. But if we can't get out to work, what are we supposed to do? And if we just need to keep harping, and we have been, that everything has to be designed from a universal perspective so that everyone can benefit. My mother is 80. She fell and had a stroke because her apartment wasn't designed accessible and there was nothing available. How many seniors would be living at home with dignity if there was more accessible units out there? We need to have these opportunities put out there for us. So we continue to go back. When I say we, it's both myself, like the New Brunswick Coalition of Persons with Disabilities, and the Accessible Housing Network of Canada that I also volunteer with. And these are just a few ways that we say, easy ways to make housing accessible. One, make all new housing universal development. First of all, it works for persons with disabilities, works for seniors, it works for our veterans, it works for able-bodied people, and it works for people that might go out skiing this weekend and tear a tendon and need some accessibility for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And if you start planning UD, it doesn't cost a penny more. Parking spots. You can't find a place to park in New Brunswick that's accessible to save your soul some days. There's nothing there, or they're on hills. They're not made for ramps. It's just insane. We're going after municipalities. Tell us how many parking tickets you've done in the last 2-3 years for people illegally parked in accessible spots. Showing them where spots need to be. Showing them if they need curb cutouts and why. Because they don't understand, because no one's held them accountable to date. Talking to them about municipal parks. How are your trails made? What are you using on the ground? Is there parking there for us? Are there some sensory gardens if we need them? Very easy to do, especially if you start at the planning stage, makes it more accessible. Does your city or municipality have an accessibility committee that has some authority? Not just so that you send something their way every now and then and you don't listen to them. If you're doing construction, good Lord, put up notification at the corner. Because all my friends in wheelchairs tell me it's only when my chair's almost out of power and I've gone all the way down, and then they have a little pylon saying, oh, you got to turn around and go all the way back to the corner to go across. And it's, your chair's almost out of power and you really got to go pee. And that's when this happens. So let's make these the same way we tell cars that this street is closed off down the way. Tell walkers, tell people that are trying to use the streets that these streets are closed halfway down so people can make informed decisions.
Shelley,
Am I done?
Yeah, you
Okay.
are so right. We're running so tight on time. I
Okay.
really apologize. I'm
All
not
right.
sure if we have time for any questions, because I want to say something about Marcia. So Marcia, you can tell me if you want to take a question or two, because we've got a broadcast deadline at that ends at 4, and we've got interpreters who have to go.
Absolutely. So I'll just stop and say my contact info is there if anyone has any questions.
Beautiful.
I'm always here to talk, to chat, and I want to thank this group for addressing so many great things today. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so far we have no hands.
It's because
Okay.
I'm not asking questions.
Well, you know what? I really think that you are so expressive, and a lot of what you're talking about really has a lot to do with action. And I think that no matter where we are in Canada, we should look around our communities and see what action we can really investigate and instigate. And then contact AEBC.
Yeah. And
Yes.
don't work in silence. Anything that affects one group affects another group. Let's work together and make this better for all of us, because as we age, we're going to have other disabilities that come about. So let's make things better today so that we're all benefiting.
Here, here. So I'd like to now pass it off to Marcia, who is our esteemed president of the Alliance for Equality for Blind Canadians. She is truly our champion advocate. She is truly our empowerment leader, and we love her. And so, Marcia, it's yours to thank everyone.
Thank you, Pat, for being such a great MC. And thank all of our speakers. You were all amazing, and I'm sure that you've given you've given everybody things to think about. I'd like to thank AMI for broadcasting once again. And we hope we'll see you next year as well. This is an ongoing labor of love. This year I got to chair it, and it's been an ongoing labor of love. I'd like to thank our empowerment partner sponsor, Baker McKenzie. We've had other sponsors, but Baker McKenzie is our biggest sponsor to date. And thank you very much. And our partners are the Accessibility Hamilton Alliance, the Accessible Housing Network, Accessible Media Inc., CCB Toronto Visionaries, Centre for Independent Living Toronto, Citizens with Disabilities Ontario, Community Services for Independent Living Northwest, Ethno-Racial, oh, I knew I was going to mess this one up. Sorry, Leroy. Ethno-Racial People with Disabilities Coalition of Ontario. You know, I should have just stuck with the acronym for that one. Thunder Bay Information Radio, Trailblazers Tandem, cycling clubs, and Wood Green Community Services. All of the partners, we could not have done it without you. I'd like to thank our planning committee, some of whom are here. And our interpreters, Rosalie, Emily, Sandra, and Max, our captionist. I hope you could keep up with us. And of course, you, our audience, for listening and participating and just looking forward and embracing change, because that's what we need, and it is the constant. You know, the only thing that's constant is change, and we all need some. It's yeah, we all need some change. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and we will meet again next year.
Thank you so much. This was amazing.